Fuck all you hoes. Get a grip, baby.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
I leaned in for a kiss with my longtime girlfriend and roommate, Nicole, who happens to be the same person. No throuple business on my watch. Anyway, after the kiss denial, she gave me this snarl and said,
Jaden, you're a piece of shit, and I want you to move out of our apartment.
I replied legally, no, and crumbled fast in the trade centers. Too soon? I'll never forget it. So to clear my head, I decided to go for a quick walk, like one does. Maybe I goofed around and said I might as well jump off a bridge. And that B word took me seriously and immediately called my sweet and caring mama. Scared shitless, she arrived in a freaking hour and some change, even though it usually takes about 2.5 from her hometown. But hey, she thought her firstborn baby was allegedly going to die, so I get it. Appreciate it, Mom. Love ya. Perhaps it didn't happen exactly like that, but it's my story, and I'm sticking to it. However, goddammit, it went down pretty similarly. She did deny my affection, and I did say I might as well jump off a bridge. And add insult to injury, she wanted to break up after I moved my entire life across the state to help her out run her super senior year. Selfish, you ask me then, and now. Let's be clear, though. I never once said I was going to kill myself. I just jokingly said, might as well. I'd politely argue those two are indeed different. Not worlds apart, but certainly separate. It's like comparing apples to oranges, maybe. But to cut a long story short, your boy sort of hinted at suicidal thoughts, but I didn't mean it. I'm a freaking survivor, so get used to that idea, because I've just begun. Wipe your mom's chin. It's time for me to earn my comeback. Story. Grab a snack, maybe a couple carbonated beverages, and get comfy, because it's going to be a roller coaster ride. Trust me, the following months of my life weren't exactly fantastic. She was my first love, my first everything. And to top it all off, she preyed upon me in my early years. I was just sitting there, looking all cute and youthful in my little schoolboy outfit. Swoop! And then she picked me up in her sleek two-door blacked-out car. And while it may have been an intimidating vibe, I wouldn't call it despicable. To be fair, she was a senior when I was a freshman, so the age difference wasn't that bad. It was still a bit unusual, but within legal boundaries. I even became somewhat of a famous figure around school. Or so I thought. In my mind, Jaden was the go-to person for all things manly. We met when I was 15 and she was 18. Truly, it wasn't as messed up as it sounds. If anything, I may have been the one that pursued her more. Gives playful high five. I mean, I was definitely the better looking one. Yes, if it's a statutory definition, but let's face it. No grown man in the court of law would take that claim seriously when you possess the charm and charisma that I do. Picture this.
Your Honor, she found me when I was 15 years old.
The judge looks up, radiating confidence. Nice one, man. Exchanges a friendly fist bump. All jokes aside, the next few months were challenging to say the least. I spent every waking moment trying to win back the supposed love of my life. I tried everything. Romantic dinners, breakfast surprises, taking care of household chores, looking after our cat, and even doing the grocery shopping. I turned into her little house husband. So when April came around, I had a plan. I was planning for a special birthday treat. After all, the fresh vanilla air has a way of stirring up certain desires. My birthday falls at the end of April, precisely on the 24th. In my mind, if I was going to spend my special day with my special someone, I figured she'd at least polish a knob. Or blow out the candle, Perform oral sex. Thus, I devised a plan to go home a little earlier, before my actual birthday, so I could celebrate my family. It was a bit of an ordeal since I lived about 2.5 hours away, so I took the 21st and 22nd of April off, clearly prioritizing what mattered most.
Getting fondled again. Finally.
On that day, I woke up bright and early, as I often did. I worked out before Haggard even twitched. I loved boxing and MMA, mimicking and practicing the moves while watching the sport. It's an intense workout, and like any dedicated JRE fan, I hold a medical marijuana card and incorporate some cannabis in my routine, especially if I'm going to be working out hard. That morning, I pushed myself at least 333 push-ups in a 30-minute shadowboxing session. Of course that calls for a doobie beforehand. That's just how I roll. Up. Feeling pumped and ready for the day, I showered and freshened up a bit. It was around 8 a.m. and I had to wake up the Dream Crusher herself for school. After that, I chilled in the living room for a couple hours, took my CB Dizzle, and then headed off to the cafe where I worked. I needed a coffee and a little treat for the drive in my lady's car. Or shall we say, somewhat lady's car? I was born and raised in the backwoods of West Michigan and spent the majority of my time there. I was heading to my cozy tiny hometown of Kent City, home of the Eagles. Sipping on my dirty chai latte and munching on a delicious blueberry muffin, I felt ready to conquer the day. As I sometimes do, I was cruising along my merry way, bumping a bit of Eminem.
I said, you don't wanna fuck with Shady. Why? Cause Shady fucking kill you.
After a while, I received a call from my mother. She asked me if I could pick up my sister from her track practice. Knowing I had some spare time, I agreed. However, I hadn't brought any medicine with me. And by that, I mean ganja. In my opinion, that's a priority for any festival or celebration. Who wants to be in pain while eating birthday cake? Right? As I expected, I arrived home in Kent City around 3:30. My sister's track practice ended at 4:30, so I decided to head to the next town over to grab some Mary Jane. Lucky for me, they were still running the 420 deals, and I scored some free goodies like a shirt, bag, glasses. I ended up looking like a Snoop Doggy Dogg wannabe. But bear in mind, I was in Nicole's car, the little two-door, blacked out, 2005 Ford Focus. Quite easy to spot pot enthusiast pop. Here's the thing. There's no way I could pick up my little sister from her track practice while that obvious paraphernalia in my car. So I had to make a diversion and return to my parents' house to drop it off. As my sister Zoe had no clue about my 420 habit. She believed I was a good church boy and I wanted to keep it that way. So off to my parents' house I went.
Country roads, take me home.
Boom, smack, crunch. At nearly 4 p.m. on the road my parents live, disaster struck. I was hit by a Buick SV that was going around 70 miles per hour in the westbound direction. The impact sent both me and Nicole's little go-kart flying into the neighboring field. Witnesses stopped and were in shock at the sight of a catastrophic car accident. Allegedly. Okay, Jaden, it was you. Stop denying it. Yeah, so I blew through a stop sign less than a mile from home. I don't remember the actual impact, possibly because that's not what happened. But hey, that's the story the conscious driver and passenger claimed, so I guess that's what happened. And sadly, it most likely did. But that doesn't change the fact the conscious driver who hit me couldn't have handled the situation any worse. This middle-aged lady was screaming at my lifeless corpse, more upset about the fact about spraining her wrist than the whole situation. I know this because out of the blue, an old schoolmate, Fatisha, pulled up and started de-escalating the situation. She and her sister managed to calm down the panicking lady, or so I think. Meanwhile, I was busy seizing, convulsing, slipping in and out of consciousness, trying to readjust my dislocated humerus bone back into my arm. With all the commotion, the house directly in front of the crash was looted rather quickly. They heard it all. Honestly, it was a best-case scenario. It was the old police chief of the small town, my Uncle Dan. Kind of uncle? Not really. You know how big families are with divorce. Well, Dan the man called the aeromedical dudes, and they got there before the regular ambulances even did. The helicopter took around 10 to 15 minutes, but I'm not too sure. I wasn't really thriving at the time. By then, my family realized they had no idea where I was and began to worry. They had been trying to get a hold of me for a while by then, but I'm tricky, so they wouldn't know where I was unless I had told them recently. And guess what? I hadn't, because I was just hit by a speeding vehicle. The heli-blades flew over my parents' house where they were outside in a frantic stupor. Already thinking the worst. My mama jumped in her car and raced the helicopter to find out if baby boy was dying this time. She got out of the car and saw her son lying in the crushed car. Lifeless humanly possible. The left side of my face was completely bashed in. My jaw hanging off my head. My neck all contorted, and my elbow literally stuck out of my arm. I was bleeding out. Slowly dying. At the brisk age of 19, about to be 20, Jaden Cato, was as good as dead.
DED. Dead.
I was rushed to Grand Rapids via air traffic. At that point, they began life-saving operations and tests. For obvious reasons, because of the plague of COVID, my mother wasn't allowed to fly into Grand Rapids with me. Instead, she rushed to the hospital in her car and called my lady up. My family didn't know we were fully broken up. I was embarrassed that I moved my life out to her for nothing. I was in denial at that point. So she called and broke the news, and Nicole uncharacteristically hopped in her mom's car that we borrowed and raced the drive.